Good morning, English 9 parents. Good to see everyone, and happy Monday. A few really quick things as far as what's going on in English 9, where we've been and where we're going, and most importantly, why. As far as where we've been, students on Friday turned in their kind of culminating project on our success unit. Many students did extended writings. A few students actually created something. And so they're going to be conferencing with me later this week to walk me through what it is they created and why, still embedding textual evidence, like all of those things. And a few students even created small speeches that they're going to be giving, and we'll talk a little bit about that on a kind of a one-on-one thing this week. So if you're not 100% positive what your student did, then please make sure you follow up with him or her. Today would be that great thing to, or great day to follow up, find out what it is they did, why they did that out of all of the options that they had. Start your conversations there. I also want to preview what's coming up. We're going to start our work with some fiction stuff. We did our success unit, which is almost all nonfiction. We were going to the New York Times and to the Atlantic and some other really interesting places, as well as listening to TED Talks to work on our nonfiction skills. Now we're going to bring in our fiction skills to help kind of bridge the gap between the success unit and our first novel of Mice and Men. We'll get into that here in just a couple weeks. So to help them with that, short stories should be a really good place for us to start. And we're going to really work on what reading at the high school level looks like, which is really trying to move beyond the surface level of what's happening, what are characters doing, to why. How did the author kind of create this piece, and why did he or she design it that way? What are they really trying to get at? Like, why did they choose a story about two migrant workers? What's kind of the deeper story that they're trying to teach us about? Chances are the migrant workers is kind of like surface level. There's something deeper that they're commenting on. Our job is to figure out what that is. We're going to do that and practice that through short stories before we get to Of Mice and Men. So with that in mind, kind of your homework for the week is to touch base with your student about what he or she has been reading. We know that they have independent reading books. They should have those in their backpacks at all times. They should be bringing those home. If you don't know what your student is reading, start there. That's a great chance to follow up. And whether or not your student's really liking it and what they're liking about it. You're going to be asked to kind of do the same thing with the short stories that we're doing this week and into next week, and certainly Of Mice and Men. And here's why that's really, really important. When you talk with your students about what he or she is reading, you have a chance to ask what they think, what questions they have, what makes sense, and then follow up with that why. That's a great chance to kind of find out how well is my student comprehending what it is that they're reading. And you don't have to be an expert. You don't even have to have read the pieces. It's okay if when we get to Of Mice and Men, you haven't read that since high school or maybe ever. Although if you'd like to borrow the book, I'd happily send home a copy and you can read along with us. Only 6 chapters, really doable. But it's not about being an expert. It's really not. And it is just about having a conversation, because the first step to interpretation is being able to read and summarize what you read. All you're doing by kind of asking them about what they're reading is to take those first crucial steps, ask, what is it that you're reading? What's making sense to you? What are your reactions? Can you summarize that? Ask them to do that for their independent reading book. Ask them to do that for some of the short stories we're getting to in the next few weeks, and certainly ask them about that once we get into Of Mice and Men in a few weeks. The other thing is, if you're reading anything, whether that's fiction, nonfiction, whether that's a full text, whether that's an interesting article you come across in your news app or like wherever it is, don't be afraid to kind of share what you're reading, as well as if there's anything kind of challenging or confusing. The more we're honest about kind of our thinking process, the more likely it is that they're going to be open with us about that. And part of it is we need to make sure that they're self-sufficient a little bit, and that when they come across a struggle, they know that that's okay, and they learn some strategies to work through that. I'll be really open about that. There will be times where we read something and I say, what do you make of this moment? Like, I've read this 4 or 5 times. Like, I don't quite know what to make of it. And I think that's really important that we're honest about those things. So check in with your student, ask how reading's going, ask why. That's the big question to keep asking. And again, ask them just to summarize what they've been reading. Because if you ask them to summarize, you're going to know pretty quickly whether or not they're truly engaging and truly understanding what it is that they're reading. Folks, we'll keep you updated with other things that are coming up as it gets closer to Of Mice and Men, but follow up on that reading. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that that you'd like to talk through, please don't hesitate to reach out. And please continue to use the class website to follow along with our lesson plan page, or if a student's absent, encourage him or her to go there to find out what we did in class and to get any documents. Have a great week, and thank you again for your time.